In a cozy little house at the end of Maple Street, lived a girl named Andrea and her mother, Sarah. Every morning the sun peeked through their window, casting a golden glow on the cheerful yellow walls. Andrea would wake up to the sweet smell of pancakes sizzling on the stove, and her heart would flutter with happiness. "Good morning, sunshine," Sarah would sing, her voice bright and warm like the morning sun itself. "Good morning, Mom," Andrea would shout back, her eyes sparkling with excitement. They shared everything: laughter, secrets, and dreams inside their magical little world. As the days passed, Andrea eagerly awaited their evening ritual, the bedtime stories. Each night, Sarah would open a worn-out storybook with colorful illustrations, and Andrea would cuddle close under her fluffy blanket. They traveled to faraway lands where princesses danced with dragons, and brave heroes fought knights and saved their villages. Andrea's imagination soared, and with each story her love for adventure grew. One starry night, as Sarah read about a brave knight, Andrea suddenly gasped. "Mom, do you think knights and dragons really exist?" she asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Sarah chuckled softly, brushing a lock of hair from Andrea's face. "Well, my dear, they exist as long as you believe in them. Our hearts can create magic like no other." Andrea smiled, her heart swelling with every tale. But little did she know that magic was about to be tested. A few weeks later, a fierce storm struck their town. The wind howled like a pack of wolves, and rain lashed against the windows with great force. Andrea clutched her stuffed bear, Mr. Cuddles, as she and Sarah nestled on the couch under a big warm blanket. "Is the storm going to hurt us, Mom?" Andrea asked, her voice trembling just a bit. "Not at all, sweetheart. Remember, the love between us is stronger than any storm. We have each other, and that's what matters," Sarah replied, wrapping her arms tightly around Andrea, giving her all the love and comfort in the world. But that night, as the storm raged on, something unexpected happened. The lights went out, plunging the house into darkness. Andrea's heart raced with fear. She hugged Mr. Cuddles tighter, wishing she could draw comfort from his button eyes. "Don't worry, darling," Sarah reassured, her calm voice echoing through the shadows. "I'll get some candles." As Sarah fumbled for the candles, a loud crash suddenly shook the house. Andrea whimpered. "Mom, what was that?" "I don't know, and it's okay. Just stay close to me," Sarah replied, but her voice had shifted slightly, revealing a hint of concern. The lights flickered back on for a brief but blinding moment, illuminating a shadow in the corner of the room. Andrea's heart sank. The shadow grew larger, and for a moment she feared it might be a monster. But then the lights went out once more, and the house turned into a gloomy silence. "Mom?" Andrea cried. In the pitch black, a thick fear wrapped around her, squeezing her heart. But then she heard it, a soft whisper that seemed to come from the dark. "Help! Mom?" Andrea shouted again, and just then she felt a gentle squeeze on her hand. It was Sarah, her heart racing as well. "I'm here, Andrea. Remember, we have each other. Whatever is out there," Sarah paused, trying to catch her breath, "we'll face it together." Suddenly there was a loud crash from outside, rattling the windows. A flash of lightning split the sky, and in that brief light they saw it. A large fallen tree had crashed against their cozy home, creating a huge hole at the back. Andrea gasped, and her heart raced even faster. "What are we going to do?" Sarah took a deep breath, her voice steady. "First we stay calm. We're safe in here, and no matter what, we'll figure this out together." With the storm still raging outside, Sarah grabbed a flashlight, and they crept closer to the back door to assess the damage. Outside, rain poured down, but they could see the huge tree that had taken so much of their peace. Just then, Andrea noticed something glimmering near the fallen tree. "Mom, look," she cried, pointing at a shiny object in the dark. Curiosity sparked between them, and Sarah nodded, her brow furrowed with both concern and intrigue. "Let's go check it out, but we must stay very close to each other." Together, they stepped outside into the pouring rain, the flash of the flashlight illuminating the path in front of them. Approaching the tree, they found something astonishing, a beautiful silver locket gleaming amidst the mud. "What is it, Mom?" Andrea asked, awestruck. Sarah picked up the locket, wiping off the grime. "I don't know, sweetheart, but it looks special." As she opened it, they both gasped in surprise. Inside was a small picture of a little girl, a girl who looked just like Andrea. "I think it's me?" Andrea exclaimed, her voice a mix of wonder and confusion. "This is quite mysterious," said Sarah, her heart beating faster. "It seems to be connected to you in some way." But before they could ponder more, a gust of wind swept through, sending shivers down their spines. The storm began to calm and soon the clouds melted away to reveal a twinkling sky above. "Let's take this inside for now," Sarah urged, and rushing back into their warm home, they felt a new sense of hope. Wrapped in blankets, they held the locket together under the dim candlelight. As they quietly contemplated the locket, Sarah spoke softly, "Andrea, always remember that even when storms come, love will guide us through, and no matter what mysteries we face, we will solve them together." Andrea smiled, her heart feeling light. The bond they shared felt even stronger now, filled with curiosity, love, and a sprinkle of magic that they both seemed to breathe together. And in that moment, both mother and daughter knew that from this point on, their lives would be intertwined with adventure, surprises, and the undeniable strength of a mother's love. Thus began not only a journey into the mysteries of the locket but also an adventure that would lead them to discover realms of courage, bravery, and the unbroken bond that defined their very existence. The sky was bright with possibilities, just waiting for them to embrace their newfound, extraordinary adventure. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, spilling golden light across the kitchen table where Andrea was enjoying a stack of fluffy pancakes. The delightful aroma wafted around her as she took a bite, savoring the sweetness, feeling content and loved, just as every morning had been. Sarah hummed a cheerful tune as she poured syrup onto Andrea's plate, her smile brightening the room. "Remember, the school play is today. You're going to be amazing up there, sweetheart." Andrea, with her eyes sparkling, nodded eagerly. "I can't wait. I've practiced so much, Mom," she replied, her voice filled with excitement. "Of course you're going to shine. Just be yourself and everything will be perfect," Sarah encouraged, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. After breakfast, they gathered Andrea's backpack, filled with script pages, a sparkly headband, and a heart-shaped locket that had become her treasure. "I'll wear this for good luck," Andrea exclaimed, slipping the locket around her neck. As Sarah brushed Andrea's hair, they shared laughter and whispered secrets, completely engulfed in their little world. Every brushstroke felt like a moment frozen in time, creating beautiful memories that Andrea would cherish forever. "Now go and dazzle them today, my little star," Sarah said as they finished getting ready. "Love you, Mom," Andrea shouted, bounding out the door with a spring in her step, the weight of her backpack bouncing against her back. "Love you too, sweetheart. Break a leg," Sarah called after her, a warm smile spreading across her face. The day at school was a whirlwind of energy, friends laughing, teachers bustling, and the delightful anticipation of the play filling the air. Andrea felt on top of the world, practicing her lines and enjoying every moment until the final bell rang. But as she stepped off the school bus that afternoon, a certain unease settled over her, a nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach. She spotted her father, George, waiting beside the principal at the school entrance, their faces serious. "Dad?" Andrea called, her heart pounding. "What's going on?" As she approached them, George's face transformed into a mask of sadness that Andrea had never seen before. "Andrea, sweetheart," he began, his voice trembling. "We need to talk." "Is it about the play? Did something happen?" she asked, confusion swirling in her mind. "No, darling. It's about your mom." Andrea's heart felt like it was suddenly encased in ice. The world around her began to fade, the laughter of her classmates echoing distantly as she stood frozen. "What about Mom?" she whispered, her voice small and scared. The principal, Ms. Rodriguez, stepped forward gently. "Andrea, I'm so very sorry. There was an accident. Your mother, she didn't make it." Time seemed to freeze around Andrea. The sound of Ms. Rodriguez's voice faded into silence, and her world tilted on its axis. A rush of emotions flooded her, confusion, denial, and an overwhelming tide of grief. "What do you mean? This can't be true," she cried, tears welling up in her eyes. George reached out a hand to comfort her, but Andrea recoiled, taking a step back. It felt as if the ground had shattered beneath her, leaving her adrift in a world that no longer made sense. Her mind raced back to the morning's sunny moments, her mother's laughter, the last kiss, and the pancakes they shared. But she was just fine. We just had breakfast," Andrea protested, her voice cracking, the innocence of childhood colliding violently with the stark reality of loss. "Accidents happen, sweetheart, and they can take the ones we love from us when we least expect it," George said gently, the pain in his own eyes evident. As Andrea stood there, the gravity of the moment weighed heavily upon her heart. Shadows crept in, replacing the bright warmth of the morning. She wanted to scream, to run away, to wake up from what felt like a terrible nightmare. "I want to see her. I need to see her," Andrea sobbed, the desperate ache of longing clawing at her. I know," George whispered, pulling her close, desperately holding onto his own tears for her sake. But she's gone, Andrea. She's in a better place and we need to hold on to the love she gave us. The coldness of those words sunk deep into Andrea's soul. A void opened inside her, enveloping her heart in shadow. What better place? She wanted her mother right here, laughing, brushing her hair, reading bedtime stories, sharing pancakes. Everything was supposed to stay the same. As the tears streamed down her cheeks, Andrea felt her tiny world expand into an ocean of grief, every drop falling heavy with despair. How would she face life without Sarah's love lighting her way? That first night without Sarah, everything changed. The beloved books, the bright kitchen, and the warm embrace of home all felt foreign and empty. Andrea lay in bed clutching Mr. Cuddles with desperation as if her stuffed bear could shield her from the pain that now gripped her heart. Sleep evaded her. Instead, memories rushed through her mind, the bedtime stories, the laughter, the warm sunlight that seemed to follow them wherever they went. That love, she realized, was now a ghost of what once was, so vibrant, so reassuring, yet strikingly absent. But beneath the sorrow, something stirred, the lingering magic of her mother's words. Our hearts can create magic like no other. Though it felt fragile like a whisper, a flicker of hope ignited amidst the sadness. Perhaps she could honor her mother's love not just through tears, but by keeping their adventures alive within her. Little did Andrea know this was not just the end. The locket she had held so dear, his longing for her mother, might hold secrets that could guide her through the darkness, helping her find a way to weave the warmth of Sarah's love into her own heart forever. As the moon cast a soothing light over the house, Andrea closed her eyes, embracing the memories tightly, bracing herself for the journey ahead. A journey filled with grief, healing, and the discovery of a magic that could ignite the flame of a mother's love even in the darkest of nights. The days blurred together in a haze of grief and confusion. Andrea wandered the empty halls of her home, searching for a glimpse of the warmth that once filled every corner. But it was gone, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to swallow all sound. Her father, George, had changed overnight. The man who had once been her rock, her confidant, and her partner in laughter, now seemed like a stranger. His eyes, once bright and full of kindness, had dulled, and his smile had become a rare sight. Andrea tried to reach out to him to talk about her mother and the memories they had shared. But every time she mentioned Sarah's name, George's expression would cloud over, and he would quickly change the subject. "Honey, let's focus on getting through the day, okay?" he would say, his voice firm but devoid of emotion. Or, "I'm trying to take care of some things, Andrea. Can we talk about this later?" Later never came. The conversations were always cut short, and Andrea was left feeling frustrated and alone. She began to feel like she was walking on eggshells, never knowing when her father's mood would shift. The house, once a haven of warmth and love, had become a cold and unforgiving place. Andrea struggled to adjust to this new reality. She would find herself standing in front of the refrigerator, staring at the photos of her and her mother, wondering why her father couldn't see the pain she was in. "Why won't you talk about Mom?" she would ask, her voice shaking with emotion. George would sigh, his eyes flashing with a mixture of sadness and annoyance. "Andrea, I've told you we need to focus on moving forward. Your mother is gone and we can't change that." But Andrea couldn't move forward. Not yet. She needed to hold on to the memories of her mother, to keep her alive in some way. She would try to talk to George about the little things like the way Sarah used to make her laugh, or the way she would sing in the car. But George would shut her down, his expression growing colder with each passing day. One day, while rummaging through her mother's closet, Andrea stumbled upon a box filled with old photographs and mementos. She spent hours poring over the memories, tears streaming down her face as she relived the happy moments she had shared with her mother. When George came home from work, he found Andrea surrounded by the photos, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "Andrea, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice stern. "Just looking at some old pictures, Dad," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. George's expression darkened. "You need to put those away, Andrea. It's not healthy to dwell on the past." Andrea felt a surge of anger. "You never want to talk about Mom, but I need to remember her. I need to keep her alive in my heart." George's face hardened and he turned away. "I said put them away, Andrea. We're not going to discuss this anymore." The silence that followed was oppressive, a heavy blanket that suffocated Andrea. She realized that she was alone in her grief, that her father was not going to be there to support her. As the days turned into weeks, Andrea began to withdraw into herself. She stopped talking to her friends, stopped playing with her toys, and stopped smiling. The pain of losing her mother was bad enough, but the pain of losing her father's love and support was almost too much to bear. The locket, once a symbol of her mother's love, now felt like a burden, a reminder of all that she had lost. Andrea would hold it in her hand, feeling the weight of her grief, and wonder if she would ever find happiness again. As the darkness closed in around her, Andrea made a promise to herself. She would hold on to the memories of her mother no matter what. She would keep her alive in her heart, even if her father wouldn't. And so, she began to write in a journal, pouring out her feelings and memories onto the page. It was a small act of defiance, a way of keeping her mother's memory alive in a world that seemed determined to erase her. As she wrote, Andrea felt a sense of peace settle over her. It was a fragile peace, one that could be shattered at any moment, but it was enough to give her the strength to keep going. And so, she would continue to hold on to the memories, to keep her mother's love alive in her heart. Even in the darkest of times, Andrea would find a way to keep the flame of her mother's love burning bright. As the weeks dragged on, the house felt more like a tomb than the cozy home it used to be. The laughter that once echoed off the walls had been replaced by an unsettling silence. Each room was steeped in the weight of what was lost, and Andrea felt as if the life had been sucked out of her existence. She began to notice subtle changes in herself. Her reflection in the mirror showed a girl whose spark had dimmed. Her once bright eyes now appeared hollow, glimmering only with the residue of tears that seemed to have become a part of her daily routine. She often found herself staring into the depths of her darkened gaze, willing the light to return. At breakfast, Andrea sat at the kitchen table with a slice of dry bread, the only thing she could bring herself to eat. No pancakes, no vibrant fruit melodies, just a hunk of bread that didn't hold the love her mother infused into every meal. The fridge was bare, its contents limited to a few sad condiments and an old carton of milk that had long since expired. Meals had become an afterthought, and Andrea didn't have the will to ask for anything more. Each day blended into the next, where the primal routine of getting out of bed and attending school felt like a monumental challenge. Andrea sat in class, her mind often drifting to her mother's warm embrace, the smell of her perfume, the way she would sing melodies to make every scraped knee feel better. Now there was nothing of comfort, only an aching void. Her father had turned into a ghost in his own home, consumed by the numbing weight of grief. He spent long hours at work, avoiding being present in any emotional capacity. Even when he was home, he seemed to be lost in another world, his eyes vacant, as if he were staring into a chasm. "Are you all right, Andrea?" one of her friends had asked one day, concern etched on their face as Andrea sat alone at lunch with her dry bread. "Yeah, I'm fine," she had replied, forcing a smile, knowing deep down the words rang hollow and untrue. Inside, her heart ached for the simple joys of laughter and connection, yet despair kept her from reaching out. Days grew longer and heavier, wrapping Andrea in an unrelenting fog. After school, she would wander through the house, lost and hollow, often retreating to the safety of her room. She buried herself in her journal, writing about her feelings and memories, which had become both an escape and a cry for help. But nobody was there to hear her silent struggle. Then one sunny afternoon her grandmother, Mary, arrived. Fresh from her home, she walked through the open door with concern in her eyes, immediately sensing the shift in the atmosphere. The moment she stepped inside, her heart sank. The house lacked its usual warmth, and the silence felt deafening, like a weight pressing down on her chest. "Where's Andrea?" she asked George, who stood in the kitchen, the light cutting through his somber demeanor. "In her room," he replied curtly, avoiding her gaze. Mary made her way down the hallway, each step echoing the dread building in her chest. When she finally pushed open the door to Andrea's room, her heart shattered into pieces. There sat Andrea, hunched over the journal, her hair disheveled, eyes red and puffy. The light that used to radiate from her had dulled significantly, her skin pale and sallow. "Andrea, sweetheart," Mary crooned softly, kneeling by the girl's side, her voice dripping with concern. "What's going on? Why didn't you tell me?" Andrea looked up, bewildered, instantly feeling the warmth of her grandmother's love wrap around her like a blanket. "I'm okay, Grandma," she replied weakly, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her true feelings. Mary surveyed the room, her heart aching. It smelled faintly of dust, and her eyes were drawn to the untouched piles of laundry, the stacks of moldy dishes in the corner, and the collection of uneaten food littered on Andrea's desk. Mary noticed the half-eaten slice of bread on the plate beside her granddaughter, a haunting sign of neglect. "That's not a good meal, Andrea," Mary remarked gently, her heart breaking for the girl. "Have you eaten anything else?" It took every ounce of Andrea's remaining strength to hold back the tears. "I've been eating," Just fine, she answered, but the quiver in her voice gave her away. Sweetheart, this isn't fine. You need proper meals and love, you can't keep living like this. Before Andrea could respond, her grandmother opened her arms, and Andrea found herself enveloped in a warm embrace. In that moment, the dam broke and she let the tears flow freely, soaking into Mary's sweater as a sense of relief washed over her. I miss her so much, Grandma, Andrea sobbed, her heart unleashing everything it had been holding. I feel so alone. Mary cradled her, rubbing her back gently, her own heart breaking for her granddaughter's pain. Oh, my darling. It's okay to feel this way. It's okay to cry. You're not alone, I promise. We will get through this together, she whispered, trying to be a beacon of hope in this dark storm. As Mary continued to hold Andrea, she glanced at the open journal on the desk. The entries were filled with raw emotion, reminiscences of laughter and love mixed with deep sadness, the testimony of a girl fighting a battle no one else could see. Can we talk about your mother? Mary asked softly after a moment. Andrea pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. It was an easy question, but the vulnerability it demanded felt overwhelming. Taking a shaky breath, she whispered, I want to remember her, Grandma. But Dad won't talk about her. I feel like I'm forgetting what she looked like. Mary's heart surged with compassion, running her fingers through Andrea's hair. You don't have to forget her, sweetheart. Let's keep her memory alive together. It's a part of healing. In that moment, something flickered in Andrea's heart, the tiniest glimmer of hope. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she felt. With her grandmother by her side, perhaps she could begin to reforge the connection to her mother, one memory at a time. Can we look at some pictures? You have some, right? Andrea's voice was a fragile thread of longing. Absolutely, my love. Let's find them together. We'll make a beautiful memory book, one that honors your mother and everything she meant to us. Andrea nodded, the simple promise lighting a spark deep within her. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make the weight of her sorrow feel a bit lighter. With Mary's help, she knew she could find a way to navigate through this cold reality and resurrect the warmth of her beloved mother, one cherished moment at a time. As the days went by, Mary's visits to Andrea became more frequent. She would often arrive unannounced, bearing gifts of fresh fruit, homemade cookies and warm hugs. Despite George's growing irritation with her visits, Mary was determined to be a constant presence in Andrea's life. One day, as she was helping Andrea with her homework, Mary realized that the situation was more dire than she had initially thought. Andrea's grades were slipping, and her father's neglect was taking a toll on her physical and emotional well-being. Mary knew that she had to take action, no matter how difficult it might be. She began to make plans to file for custody of Andrea, a decision that filled her with both determination and trepidation. As a retired school teacher, Mary had limited resources, but she was willing to sacrifice everything to give Andrea the love and care she deserved. As she sat at her kitchen table, poring over legal documents and researching the complexities of the custody process, Mary felt a sense of purpose that she hadn't felt in years. She was determined to be a voice for her granddaughter, to fight for her rights and her well-being. Meanwhile, George's growing irritation with Mary's visits was beginning to simmer just below the surface. He felt like she was meddling, interfering in his parenting and questioning his ability to care for his daughter. He began to wonder if Mary was trying to undermine his authority, to turn Andrea against him. Mary, I appreciate your concern, but I've got this, George said one day, his voice laced with annoyance as Mary was preparing to leave after a visit. I'm Andrea's father and I know what's best for her. Mary looked at him, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. George, I'm not trying to undermine you. I just want what's best for Andrea. And right now, that means making sure she's safe and happy. George snorted, his expression skeptical. And you think you can provide that? You're retired, Mary. You don't have the resources or the energy to take care of a teenager. Mary's face stung from the implicit criticism, but she refused to back down. I may not have the resources you do, George, but I have something that you seem to have lost. The ability to put Andrea's needs before my own. I'm willing to sacrifice everything for her, to give her the love and care she deserves. The rift between them grew wider, the tension palpable. George slammed the door shut behind Mary, feeling a mix of anger and guilt. He knew that he was neglecting Andrea, that he was failing as a father. But he couldn't seem to shake off the darkness that had descended upon him, the sense of helplessness that had paralyzed him since Sarah's death. As Mary walked back to her car, she felt a sense of resolve wash over her. She was going to fight for Andrea no matter what it took. She was going to give her the love, care and support she deserved, even if it meant going up against her own son. The battle for Andrea's custody was about to begin, and Mary was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She was a grandmother on a mission, driven by a fierce determination to protect and nurture her beloved granddaughter. The day Mary filed for custody, she felt a tumult of emotions swirling within her, a mix of determination, anxiety, and a touch of fear. The weight of the decision hung heavy on her shoulders, but she knew in her heart that this was the right path for Andrea. As she left the courthouse, clutching the documents in her hand, Mary steeled herself for the fight ahead. George's reaction was explosive when he received the custody papers. He stormed into Mary's home, his face flushed with anger. "How dare you do this? You're tearing this family apart," he shouted, his voice echoing in the small space. Mary stood her ground, her heart racing. "This isn't about me, it's about Andrea. She deserves a stable environment and love, George, things you aren't providing. You don't know what it's like to be a single parent," he retorted, his eyes darkening. "I'm doing my best." But as the court date approached, George's facade began to crack. Desperate to protect his image as the devoted father, he painted a picture of family harmony, where he was the sole provider navigating the challenges of life after loss. He spoke of the love he held for Andrea, but Mary refused to let his claims go unchallenged. Mary tapped into her network of friends and colleagues, gathering evidence pointing to George's neglect and financial irresponsibility. She spoke with teachers, neighbors, and family friends, each willing to testify about the growing void in Andrea's life. Barely a week passed before Mary could amass enough evidence to contradict George's claims, creating an undeniable contrast. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom buzzed with tension. People filled the pews, Mary's friends offering moral support, while George's arrogance loomed large. Andrea sat between them, her small frame betraying the weight of the battle erupting around her. Mary glanced at her granddaughter and felt a flush of pride. Andrea had chosen to face this head-on, knowing that her voice mattered. The judge entered and silence fell like a shroud. Opening statements were made, and George presented a picture of a grieving father, a man trying to hold it all together while raising his daughter in the midst of tragedy. But as he spoke, Mary watched as the cracks in his story began to show. Tired words and empty assurances floated through the air. When it was finally Andrea's turn to speak, the atmosphere shifted. She rose to stand before the judge, her heart racing. But there was a new resolve gleaming in her eyes. Her truth had to be told, no matter how daunting it felt. Taking a deep breath, Andrea began to share her experiences. "For as long as I can remember, it's just been my dad and me since Mom died," she said, her voice tremulous at first but gaining strength with each word. "He's at work all the time and I feel so alone. I can't even remember the last time he asked how I was doing. I go to bed hungry sometimes and I've gotten used to eating dry bread because there's hardly anything in the fridge." A hushed murmur swept through the courtroom. Mary could barely contain her emotions, but she watched as Andrea pressed on, revealing the painful truth of her father's neglect. "I want him to be happy," Andrea continued, "but I'm scared. Scared of being alone, scared that I'm not loved. I want to feel safe and cared for again." Tears pooled in Andrea's eyes as she spoke, the weight of her loneliness hanging heavy in the air. "I miss my mom so much and I just want someone who would be there for me. Sometimes I wish I could just go back to being a little girl who didn't know what sadness felt like." As her words echoed in the courtroom, the atmosphere shifted from one of tension to somber reflection. Gasps pierced the silence. Even George's confident bravado wavered. The gravity of Andrea's truth hung thick in the air, and the audience could see the chasm carved between the father and daughter. The judge, an experienced woman with kind eyes, leaned in and asked, "Andrea, thank you for sharing your feelings. What do you think would be best for you right now?" Mary held her breath, the anticipation in the room palpable. With quiet strength, Andrea responded, "I just want to live somewhere that feels like home again. Somewhere where I'm not afraid." The courtroom fell into a silence deeper than before. Hearts ached for the girl standing there, vulnerable but brave. The judge nodded, scribbling notes as she processed the raw honesty laid bare before her. As George regarded his daughter, his expression morphed from anger to bewilderment. She was revealing the truth of his neglect in a way he never anticipated. A glimmer of regret flickered in his eyes, but it was quickly masked by a defensive mechanism of anger and indignation. The battle for Andrea had escalated into something more profound. A clash not just between grandmother and father, but a confrontation between denial and the clear reality of love. Mary felt the swell of hope pulsating through her chest, knowing this was merely the beginning, but an important step toward reclaiming the safety Andrea so desperately craved. When Andrea finished speaking, The room slowly began to shift into motion, the hum of conversations igniting. Mary threw her arms around her granddaughter, pulling her into a tight embrace. "You did so well, sweetheart," she whispered, her heart swelling with pride. "You spoke your truth, and that takes a great deal of bravery." As Andrea leaned into her grandmother's warmth, the flicker of hope ignited a flame deep within her that had been extinguished for too long. In that moment, despite the looming court battle, Andrea felt less alone. Perhaps the path toward healing and home was beginning with her voice, ready to turn the tide in the fight for her future. The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick with anticipation. Mary sat at the edge of her seat, her heart pounding as the judge deliberated after hearing Andrea's poignant testimony and the mounting evidence against George. A hush fell over the room. Even whispers ceased as everyone awaited the decision that felt monumental. The judge, an impressive woman with an air of authority and understanding, finally spoke, her voice steady yet kind. "After careful consideration of the testimonies and evidence presented, I find that the current living situation for Andrea is not sustainable. It has become clear that she requires a nurturing environment, one that provides both emotional and physical care." Mary's heart raced as hope ignited within her chest. She grasped Andrea's hand tightly, a silent reassurance that they were in this together, no matter the outcome. "Therefore," the judge continued, "I am granting custody of Andrea to her grandmother, Mary. In light of the evidence presented, I am concerned about the current living conditions and overall welfare of Andrea under her father's care." A rush of disbelief mingled with joy enveloped Mary as tears welled in her eyes. She turned to Andrea, who sat stunned, blinking rapidly as she processed the words. In an instant, the reality of their now shared future began to sink in. Mary gently hugged Andrea, whispering, "You are safe now. We'll figure this out together." George's face fell, anger flashing across his features like lightning in a storm. His disbelief morphed into defiance as he stood up. "You can't do this. I'm her father. I have a right to raise my daughter," he shouted, his voice echoing across the courtroom filled with hushed spectators. The judge held up her hand, her expression unwavering. "Mr. Johnson, I am also ordering you to attend counseling and parenting courses to address your challenges as a father. Your relationship with Andrea needs to be revitalized, but it requires both proper support and intervention." George crossed his arms, simmering with resentment, but deep down, Mary could see the flicker of realization dawning on his face. Somewhere beneath the anger lay a man who was struggling, trapped in his grief and loss. Mary hoped that this path would lead him to transformation, not just for himself but for Andrea as well. As the courtroom began to empty, a sense of relief washed over Mary like a warm embrace. She pulled Andrea into her arms, holding the girl close as if to shield her from the storm that had just passed. "You did it, sweetheart. You found your courage and you spoke your truth. From now on, it's just you and me, and I promise to always be here for you," Mary reassured her, feeling the weight of years lift from her shoulders. "Do you think he'll really change?" Andrea asked, voice trembling slightly as she nested against Mary's shoulder. Mary gently brushed her granddaughter's hair back away from her face. "Change takes time, my love. What matters most is that you're safe. You deserve to feel loved, and with me you'll have all of that and more." As they embraced, tears of joy streamed down Mary's cheeks. Tears not just for the victory of the custody battle, but for the possibility of a renewed life together. The journey ahead would undoubtedly bring its own challenges, but for the first time in a long while, hope fluttered within her. Over the next few weeks, Mary and Andrea settled into their new routine. Exploring their old home together, they filled it with laughter and warmth once more. They cooked meals side by side, shared stories, and spent evenings curled up with books beneath a pile of cozy blankets. Andrea's spirit began to blossom as she felt the nurturing presence of her grandmother surrounding her. They established rituals like Sunday afternoon walks in the park, where they watched clouds drift lazily overhead, whispering dreams and secrets to each other. Slowly, Andrea started to feel the fear and loneliness fade, replaced by a sense of belonging and safety she hadn't known since before her mother's passing. Meanwhile, George embarked on his mandated courses and counseling with a mix of resistance and tentative acceptance. He would always carry the guilt of having failed Andrea, but he had been given another chance. A chance not only to change his circumstances but to transform his relationship with his daughter. Months went by and the seasons shifted. One crisp autumn day, Mary and Andrea strolled hand in hand, the trees shedding their colorful leaves like nature's confetti. They approached a small cafe and Andrea's face lit up with excitement. "Can we get hot cocoa, Grandma? With marshmallows?" "Of course, my dear. That's a must." Mary replied, smiling widely at the way joy danced in Andrea's eyes. As they sat outside sipping their cocoa, Mary proposed a spontaneous idea. How about we start a journal of adventures? We can record our little victories and dreams every week. I love that, Andrea exclaimed, her cheeks pink with enthusiasm. They spent the rest of the afternoon brainstorming their first entry, filling a page with hopes for new adventures. A trip to the mountains, a dream of a home filled with laughter, and even ideas for fun DIY projects. In that moment, Mary knew they were on the right path. Their bond was growing stronger by the day, crafted through love, respect, and unwavering support for one another. They were two souls building a life together, a life overflowing with possibilities. From that day forward, Mary fully embraced her role as Andrea's guardian, forever dedicated to nurturing the love and happiness they so richly deserved. In the depths of her heart, Mary understood that the true victory lay not in winning the court battle, but in claiming a future filled with laughter, understanding, and love. Together, they would weather any storm life threw their way, ready to face it as a family hand in hand. Mary's modest home, once filled with remnants of sadness and the echo of loss, began to blossom into a sanctuary of love and warmth for Andrea. With each passing day, the walls felt less like a cage of memories and more like a nurturing embrace, cradling the burgeoning bond between grandmother and granddaughter. The transformation was subtle but profound. On lazy Saturday mornings, the heart of the home was alive with the sounds of laughter and the sweet aroma of pancakes sizzling on the stovetop. Just like Mom used to make, Andrea would say, her voice tinged with nostalgia. Mary would smile knowingly, recalling the time she had watched her daughter whip up breakfast, their kitchen filled with joyous chatter. One Saturday, as they flipped pancakes together, Andrea suggested, "Can we make them shaped like animals, Grandma?" Mary's eyes sparkled with delight. "What a wonderful idea. Which animal should we start with?" "Let's do a bear," Andrea excitedly replied. As they tossed flour and eggs into the mixing bowl, laughter filled the air. Flour dusted their cheeks, and syrup dribbled down their fingers as they sampled their creations. The simple act of cooking together became a healing ritual, a way for Andrea to honor the memories of her mother while also creating new ones. Each pancake shaped like a bear, a bunny, or a star represented not just a meal but a connection, a bridge built over the waters of grief. With every pancake they made, Mary saw the spark returning to Andrea's eyes, which had once dulled by the weight of sorrow. Slowly, the sadness that clung to her began to dissolve, replaced by glimmers of hope and happiness. They shared stories at the breakfast table, reminiscing about the past while forging new tales. As days turned into weeks, Mary introduced other traditions into their home. They would take walks through the nearby park, collecting leaves of vibrant autumn hues to create a memory collage, reminding them of their journey together. In the evenings, they would curl up on the sofa with storybooks, reading adventures that transported them to magical realms. Andrea loved the stories of brave heroes and epic quests, her laughter ringing out like music in the quiet living room. One rainy afternoon, with the pitter-patter of the raindrops creating a soothing backdrop, Mary set up a cozy corner in their living room. She unfolded a soft blanket and filled it with pillows, transforming it into a reading nook. "This will be our special spot for story time," she announced. Andrea's eyes widened with delight as she sank into the softness, feeling cherished and secure. "Can we read the Chronicles of Narnia together?" Andrea asked, her voice full of excitement. Mary nodded, grateful for her granddaughter's blossoming interest in stories, and so they ventured into lands filled with magic and wonder, losing themselves in the narrative. Slowly but surely, the loneliness that had enveloped Andrea was replaced by a sense of belonging. She found comfort in the structure of their lives. The routines woven with love created a tapestry of rich and beautiful moments. The evenings transformed into a family affair. Even the littlest achievements, like conquering tricky math problems or finishing a book, were celebrated with little dances and cheers. Through it all, Mary remained steadfast in her commitment to Andrea's healing. She encouraged conversations about their emotions, inviting Andrea to share her feelings without judgment. "Sometimes I miss Mom so much it hurts," Andrea confessed one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. Mary took a deep breath, understanding that such feelings were normal and necessary. "It's okay to miss her, sweetheart. She's a part of you and loving her will always be part of your journey. But you have a new adventure ahead with me, and I promise to make it a beautiful one," she said gently. It was during these moments of vulnerability that their bond deepened. Mary shared her own stories of loss, of her daughter, of life, and of the precious moments she had cherished with her. The honesty between them became a source of strength, allowing Andrea to feel seen and understood. As Christmas approached, Mary decided it was time to create more memories. They decorated the house together, draping twinkling lights around the windows and hanging ornaments on a small Christmas tree. Andrea's laughter filled the room as they strung popcorn and cranberries into garlands, their hands weaving through the joyous spirit of the season. On Christmas Eve they baked cookies for Santa, giggling as they shaped dough into whimsical designs. "Do you think he'll really like these?" Andrea asked, her eyes sparkling with hope. "Of course he will. Santa loves cookies made with love," Mary replied, her heart warming at the sight of her granddaughter's excitement. That night, as they settled by the fire, Andrea gazed up at her grandma, the flickering flames reflecting in her eyes. "This is the best Christmas ever," she declared, her smile lighting up the room. With each new tradition and shared experience, the healing process flourished. Andrea's confidence began to grow, and her once timid voice grew louder, filled with dreams and aspirations. She started drawing again, sketching the wondrous worlds she envisioned in her mind. Mary filled a special box with Andrea's artwork, each piece a reminder of her growing spirit and resilience. In the soft glow of the spring sun, they planted a garden together in the backyard. As Andrea dug her hands into the earth, she felt a connection to nature, both grounding and invigorating. They nurtured flowers that spilled vibrant colors and vegetables that promised nourishment, building not only a garden but a deeper sense of partnership in their journey of healing. As months passed, it became apparent that this was no longer merely a temporary respite following tragedy, it was the dawn of a new beginning. Through patience, laughter, and the sheer force of love, Mary and Andrea were stitching together the fabric of their lives, creating a tapestry of strength, resilience, and hope. In her dreams, Andrea began to see her mother again, not as a shadow of sorrow, but as a beam of light guiding her forward. Awakening with a smile, she would tell Mary about their adventures, baking cupcakes in the sky or sailing on rainbow rivers. And Mary, always listening, forever encouraging, would remind Andrea that love, in all its forms, never truly fades. As seasons changed and time marched on, the sanctuary that Mary had built blossomed into a home, rich with laughter and support. Together they embraced the beauty of simple moments, a shared meal, a heartfelt conversation, or a glowing sunset. It was in these moments that they learned the most important lesson of all. Healing does not erase the past, it intertwines with it, creating a beautiful mosaic of memories that blend sorrow with joy, loss with new beginnings. And as their paths intertwined, Mary and Andrea found not just healing, but a renewed sense of purpose. Their love forever illuminating the way forward. With the arrival of spring, life in Mary's home flourished like the vibrant flowers blooming in the garden they had nurtured together. As the days lengthened and the sun painted the sky in brilliant hues, Andrea began to emerge from the cocoon of grief, discovering her own wings. Every morning greeted her with the sweet scent of pancakes, the warmth of coffee wafting through the air as Mary prepared for a new day. Andrea's journey at school had transformed dramatically. From a shy girl who once flinched at the thought of public speaking, she now stood taller, her heart filled with the confidence that had been cultivated in the loving embrace of her grandmother. No longer was she the girl who hid behind a curtain of sorrow, she became a bright light among her peers, radiating enthusiasm for learning and exploration. "Your science project on butterflies is amazing, Andrea," Sarah, one of her closest friends, exclaimed one afternoon after seeing the colorful display they had created together. A vibrant diorama showcasing the butterfly life cycle. "Thanks, Sarah. I was inspired by our garden." Andrea beamed, her eyes shining with pride. In these moments, the girls' laughter danced through the hallways, echoing the celebration of newfound friendship and creativity. In art class, Andrea flourished as well. Guided by her loving interactions with Mary, she poured her heart into her drawings, blending bright colors that captured the essence of her newfound happiness. One day, her teacher displayed her artwork in the hallway, and students and teachers alike praised her talent. "You have a gift, Andrea. Keep nurturing it," her teacher remarked, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Moments like these reinforced the truth that the past did not have to define her. Andrea's heart swelled with pride in her accomplishments, her friendships, and the love that enveloped her daily. At home, Andrea and Mary continued to build their lives together with laughter, care, and purpose. They established a weekend tradition of visiting the farmer's market, picking fresh vegetables, and sampling homemade treats. It became a cherished outing, a blending of flavors and experiences that deepened their bond. On Sundays, they reserved the afternoons for board games and movie marathons. The laughter that erupted over a game of Scrabble or a cozy film night filled the house, turning it into a haven of joy and togetherness. Cards Fort Surprise Sundays were created, where each week, one would plan a unique activity without revealing it to the other. One surprise led them to a pottery class, where they made mementos of their mother-slash-daughter relationship. A small bowl adorned with butterflies and flowers representing hope and love. One particularly sunny day after school, Andrea curled up on the couch, a book of fairy tales spread across her lap, her brow furrowed in thought. Mary, busy knitting a scarf, noticed her granddaughter's contemplative demeanor. "Everything all right, my dear?" she asked, placing her knitting down to give Andrea her full attention. Andrea took a deep breath, her mind swirling with questions, and said, "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. You can ask me anything." "Do you think my mom can see us?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. It was the first time she had voiced this thought, and the weight of it hung in the air like a butterfly fluttering at the edge of a breeze. Mary paused, her heart aching for her granddaughter, the weight of those words heavy with longing. She approached, sitting beside Andrea on the couch. "That's a beautiful question, Andrea. I believe that your mom, Sarah, is always with us. Love is a powerful thing, you know. It doesn't just disappear when someone leaves." Andrea nodded slowly, drawing her knees up to her chest as she listened intently. "What do you mean?" "Every moment of love we share is a piece of her." Mary's voice was steady, warm, and full of conviction. "Her love is woven into the very fabric of our lives. Every laugh, every hug, and every pancake we make together, those moments are like threads stitching us together with her spirit." A flicker of understanding ignited in Andrea's eyes, but she looked uncertain. "But I can't see her." Mary placed her hand over Andrea's. "It's true we can't see her with our eyes. But if you close your eyes and think of her, what do you feel?" Andrea shut her eyes tightly, searching her heart for the memories that wrapped around her like a warm blanket. "I feel warmth. Like I'm being held." She opened her eyes, a precious smile breaking through the remnants of her worry. "And love," she whispered, feeling it cross the barrier between the past and present. "Exactly." Mary beamed, her heart swelling with pride in how far Andrea had come. "That's her love guiding you, helping you grow even from afar. It's the love she gave you that shapes who you are and will always guide you forward, no matter what." Andrea took a deep breath, sensing the power of those words. "And whenever I miss her, I can think about all the love she gave us, and it's like she's right here?" "Always," Mary affirmed, squeezing Andrea's hand gently. "You carry her in your heart, darling. It's a beautiful reminder that love never truly fades. It transforms, it remains a part of you." As they sat in that moment, a profound sense of peace swept over Andrea. It was as if the threads of her mother's love had woven a tapestry of strength and comfort deep within her. From that day forward, whenever she felt the pang of sadness or missed her mother, she would close her eyes and allow herself to be enveloped in that warmth, remembering the stories, the laughter, and the moments they had shared. She discovered she could draw strength from the love that was everlasting, a guiding light illuminating her path forward. And so, in the weeks that followed, Andrea continued to thrive. Her confidence burgeoned as she tried new things, joined the school choir, and even signed up for the annual science fair, along with Sarah and her other friends. In her dreams, Andrea began to see her mother again, not as a shadow of sorrow, but as a beam of light guiding her forward. Awakening with a smile, she would tell Mary about their adventures, baking cupcakes in the sky or sailing on rainbow rivers. And Mary, always listening, forever encouraging, would remind Andrea that love, in all its forms, never truly fades. As seasons changed and time marched on, the sanctuary that Mary had built blossomed into a home, rich with laughter and support. Together they embraced the beauty of simple moments, a shared meal, a heartfelt conversation, or a glowing sunset. It was in these moments that they learned the most important lesson of all. Healing does not erase the past, it intertwines with it, creating a beautiful mosaic of memories that blend sorrow with joy, loss with new beginnings. And as their paths intertwined, Mary and Andrea found not just healing, but a renewed sense of purpose. Their love forever illuminating the way forward. With the arrival of spring, life in Mary's home flourished like the vibrant flowers blooming in the garden they had nurtured together. As the days lengthened and the sun painted the sky in brilliant hues, Andrea began to emerge from the cocoon of grief, discovering her own wings. Every morning greeted her with the sweet scent of pancakes, the warmth of coffee wafting through the air as Mary prepared for a new day. Andrea's journey at school had transformed dramatically. From a shy girl who once flinched at the thought of public speaking, she now stood taller, her heart filled with the confidence that had been cultivated in the loving embrace of her grandmother. No longer was she the girl who hid behind a curtain of sorrow. She became a bright light among her peers, radiating enthusiasm for learning and exploration. "Your science project on butterflies is amazing, Andrea," Sarah, one of her closest friends, exclaimed one afternoon after seeing the colorful display they had created together. A vibrant diorama showcasing the butterfly life cycle. "Thanks, Sarah. I was inspired by our garden." Andrea beamed, her eyes shining with pride. In these moments, the girls' laughter danced through the hallways, echoing the celebration of newfound friendship and creativity. In art class, Andrea flourished as well. Guided by her loving interactions with Mary, she poured her heart into her drawings, blending bright colors that captured the essence of her newfound happiness. One day, her teacher displayed her artwork in the hallway, and students and teachers alike praised her talent. "You have a gift, Andrea. Keep nurturing it," her teacher remarked, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Moments like these reinforced the truth that the past did not have to define her. Andrea's heart swelled with pride in her accomplishments, her friendships, and the love that enveloped her daily. At home, Andrea and Mary continued to build their lives together with laughter, care, and purpose. They established a weekend tradition of visiting the farmer's market, picking fresh vegetables, and sampling homemade treats. It became a cherished outing, a blending of flavors and experiences that deepened their bond. On Sundays, they reserved the afternoons for board games and movie marathons. The laughter that erupted over a game of Scrabble or a cozy film night filled the house, turning it into a haven of joy and togetherness. Cards Fort Surprise Sundays were created, where each week, one would plan a unique activity without revealing it to the other. One surprise led them to a pottery class, where they made mementos of their mother-slash-daughter relationship. A small bowl adorned with butterflies and flowers representing hope and love. One particularly sunny day after school, Andrea curled up on the couch, a book of fairy tales spread across her lap, her brow furrowed in thought. Mary, busy knitting a scarf, noticed her granddaughter's contemplative demeanor. "Everything all right, my dear?" she asked, placing her knitting down to give Andrea her full attention. Andrea took a deep breath, her mind swirling with questions, and said, "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. You can ask me anything." "Do you think my mom can see us?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. It was the first time she had voiced this thought, and the weight of it hung in the air like a butterfly fluttering at the edge of a breeze. Mary paused, her heart aching for her granddaughter, the weight of those words heavy with longing. She approached, sitting beside Andrea on the couch. "That's a beautiful question, Andrea. I believe that your mom, Sarah, is always with us. Love is a powerful thing, you know. It doesn't just disappear when someone leaves." Andrea nodded slowly, drawing her knees up to her chest as she listened intently. "What do you mean?" "Every moment of love we share is a piece of her." Mary's voice was steady, warm, and full of conviction. "Her love is woven into the very fabric of our lives. Every laugh, every hug, and every pancake we make together, those moments are like threads stitching us together with her spirit." A flicker of understanding ignited in Andrea's eyes, but she looked uncertain. "But I can't see her." Mary placed her hand over Andrea's. "It's true we can't see her with our eyes. But if you close your eyes and think of her, what do you feel?" Andrea shut her eyes tightly, searching her heart for the memories that wrapped around her like a warm blanket. "I feel warmth. Like I'm being held." She opened her eyes, a precious smile breaking through the remnants of her worry. "And love," she whispered, feeling it cross the barrier between the past and present. "Exactly." Mary beamed, her heart swelling with pride in how far Andrea had come. "That's her love guiding you, helping you grow even from afar. It's the love she gave you that shapes who you are and will always guide you forward, no matter what." Andrea took a deep breath, sensing the power of those words. "And whenever I miss her, I can think about all the love she gave us, and it's like she's right here?" "Always," Mary affirmed, squeezing Andrea's hand gently. "You carry her in your heart, darling. It's a beautiful reminder that love never truly fades. It transforms, it remains a part of you." As they sat in that moment, a profound sense of peace swept over Andrea. It was as if the threads of her mother's love had woven a tapestry of strength and comfort deep within her. From that day forward, whenever she felt the pang of sadness or missed her mother, she would close her eyes and allow herself to be enveloped in that warmth, remembering the stories, the laughter, and the moments they had shared. She discovered she could draw strength from the love that was everlasting, a guiding light illuminating her path forward. And so, in the weeks that followed, Andrea continued to thrive. Her confidence burgeoned as she tried new things, joined the school choir, and even signed up for the annual science fair, along with Sarah and her other friends. While she faced challenges as all children do, Andrea learned to lean on the love surrounding her, both from Mary and the cherished memories of Sarah. She tackled assignments with newfound assurance, raced across playgrounds with her friends, and began sharing her artwork with others, knowing there was nothing to fear. One sunny Saturday, Mary surprised Andrea with a trip to a local art fair. Colorful paintings adorned the booths, vibrant sculptures beckoned onlookers, and talented musicians played sweet melodies in the air. Andrea's spirit soared, every new sight igniting her creativity and rekindling the spark of inspiration. As they explored, Mary felt her heart overflow with joy witnessing Andrea's excitement. They stumbled upon a booth offering watercolor painting lessons, and without hesitation Andrea insisted, "Can we try this, Grandma? Please?" With a chuckle, Mary agreed, and a skilled instructor guided them through mixing colors and painting techniques. As they splashed vibrant hues across the canvas, laughter spilled between the two, creating a masterpiece, quite literally. At the end of the day, Andrea's heart was full. She was bursting with creativity and new ideas, her own world taking shape within the strokes of paint. As they packed up their supplies, Andrea turned to Mary, her eyes wide with enthusiasm. "Can we have an art show at home? We can invite everyone." Mary's heart swelled at her granddaughter's idea. "That sounds like a perfect plan. We'll celebrate your art and invite everyone who loves you. We can showcase everything you've done this year, including our pottery." The thought of sharing her creations filled Andrea with glee, as if the very spirit of her mother was cheering her on, pushing her to embrace the love they shared and pass it on to others. That evening they began preparations for the show, brainstorming decorations and invitations. Mary helped Andrea create a warm, inviting environment, while Andrea worked on polishing her best pieces to display. Decorating together became yet another tradition, and a way to express their joy in what they had created and the beauty they had found in their shared journey. As the show approached, confidence settled in Andrea's heart, a steadiness that spoke of her growth. She practiced her presentation, explaining her art to visitors as they arrived. On the evening of the art show, their modest home transformed into a gallery filled with color and echoes of laughter. Friends, neighbors, and family members gathered to witness the beauty Andrea had brought to life. "I can't believe how talented you are, Andrea," one neighbor exclaimed, admiring a radiant painting that mirrored the colors of the sunset. "I've been inspired by Grandma and my mom. Love in our family helps me create," Andrea replied, her voice ringing with pride. As the night wore on and each visitor shared their own artistic praises, Andrea glowed, her eyes shining brighter than they ever had. And as they admired a painting depicting a field of sunflowers, turning to face the sun, Mary felt an overwhelming tide of gratitude wash over her. It was a masterful representation of hope, resilience, and the bond they had created together. As the final guests began to depart, Mary wrapped an arm around Andrea's shoulder, pulling her close. "You did it, sweetheart. You turned tonight into something truly special. I couldn't be prouder of you," she whispered, feeling as if they had reached a new peak in their journey of healing together. "It feels so good to share, Grandma. I think my mom would have loved this," Andrea said softly, glancing toward the stars sparkling in the night sky. Mary nodded, holding back her tears, knowing that they had not only honored Sarah's memory but had embraced the love she had left behind. They both understood that love was not bound by time or space. It transcended everything, always connecting them. As they cleaned up the remnants of the art show, tired but exhilarated, Andrea took one last look around, her heart swelling with newfound understanding. "Even if my mom is gone, she'll always be a part of me," she confirmed, her voice steady with newfound purpose. Mary felt a sense of warmth wash over her, knowing that their lives, filled with love, laughter, and learning, would continue to grow. From that day forward, the heart of their home echoed the song of hope, a resounding reminder that love endures, guiding them as they stepped into the light of a new chapter, hand in hand.